Amado Carrillo Fuentes, a name that once sent shockwaves through the entire narco world. He wasn't just another cartel boss rising from the streets of Mexico. He was the architect of a completely new era of drug trafficking, an era built not on smuggling routes or hidden compartments, but on something far more powerful: the sky itself. While most cartels were struggling to move cocaine through trucks, cars, tunnels, and paid-off border agents, Amado created a system no one had ever dared to attempt. He purchased dozens of aircraft, small planes, private jets, cargo planes, and turned them into flying drug pipelines. His pilots were trained to fly low, without lights, in the dead of night, navigating by instinct and experience, not by radar. Plane after plane crossed the skies of Mexico and the United States, carrying tons of Colombian cocaine with military-level precision. This is how Amado earned the legendary title, El Señor de los Cielos, the Lord of the Skies. By the mid-1990s, Amado controlled the Juarez Cartel, one of the most dominant criminal organizations in the world. His power stretched from Mexico City to Bogota, and from Juarez to the streets of Los Angeles and Chicago. Some reporters even claimed he had more aircraft than the national airline of Mexico, and while that might be an exaggeration, it wasn't far from the truth. His operation was a machine, smooth, silent, and deadly efficient. But even the most powerful empires have breaking points. And for Amado Carrillo Fuentes, that breaking point arrived in 1997, the moment when everything he built began to fall apart. It started with one of the biggest blows ever struck against a drug cartel. In January 1997, Mexican authorities discovered a warehouse near Ciudad Juarez that seemed abandoned. At first, the soldiers assumed it was empty storage. But inside, hidden behind heavy crates and false walls, they uncovered something unbelievable: 21 tons of pure Colombian cocaine. This wasn't just another drug seizure. It was historic. Its street value was estimated at nearly $1 billion. A number so massive that even high-ranking officials couldn't hide it or minimize it. The DEA called it one of the largest cocaine seizures in the history of the Americas. And everyone knew immediately who the cocaine belonged to. The logistics, the routes, the markings, everything pointed in one single direction: the Juarez Cartel. Amado Carrillo Fuentes. For years, Amado had built alliances with generals, politicians, airport officials, and intelligence officers. These connections protected him, warned him, and allowed his empire to grow untouched. But a billion-dollar seizure was too big to cover up. The 21-ton bust didn't just expose the drugs. It exposed Amado's vulnerabilities, the cracks in a system he thought was indestructible. Suddenly, government allies became nervous. Rival cartels sensed weakness. The U.S. increased pressure on Mexico. And inside his own organization, betrayal began to grow. Amado knew one thing for certain: the walls were closing in. So he made a desperate, dangerous decision, one that would change the story forever. He would disappear. In July 1997, Amado entered a private hospital in Mexico City under a false name. His plan was extreme: undergo a complex plastic surgery procedure, completely change his appearance, and escape the manhunt closing around him. According to official reports, something went wrong during the operation, and Amado died on the operating table from complications related to anesthesia. But the mystery only deepened when just days later, the two surgeons who worked on him were found murdered, their bodies stuffed inside steel drums. People began questioning everything. If Amado truly died during surgery, who killed the surgeons, and why? If he didn't die, did he orchestrate the murders to silence them? Or was he killed by someone else? When authorities presented Amado's body, the coffin remained sealed. Several journalists stated the body looked bloated and unrecognizable. Even some of his associates refused to believe it was him. To this day, rumors persist that Amado didn't die, but instead escaped, possibly to Chile, Argentina, or Cuba, living quietly under a new identity. But others believe the opposite: that the 21 tons of cocaine exposed too many powerful figures, that Amado knew things too dangerous to reveal, and the only way to protect the political and military elite was to eliminate him. The truth remains buried. But one thing is certain: when those 21 tons of cocaine were discovered, They didn't just destroy a shipment. They triggered the downfall of one of the most legendary and mysterious cartel bosses in history. January 1997. What began as a routine military inspection in northern Mexico turned into one of the most shocking discoveries in the history of international drug trafficking. A Mexican military checkpoint near Ciudad Juarez received an anonymous tip about unusual activity in a warehouse located just a few miles from the U.S. border. At first, soldiers thought it was nothing, just another dusty, abandoned storage unit like thousands of others scattered across the desert. But the moment they stepped inside, everything changed. The warehouse looked quiet, silent, almost forgotten, yet behind rows of crates and metal containers, something was hidden. Something so massive that it felt like a scene straight out of a Hollywood film. There, stacked neatly and wrapped with military-style precision, were packages containing 21 tons of pure Colombian cocaine. 21 tons. Enough to supply the entire United States drug market for months. Enough money to buy small nations, fund armies, or reshape the political landscape of Mexico. Its street value was estimated at nearly $1 billion. Within hours, the news spread across intelligence circles faster than wildfire. This wasn't a normal bust. This was an earthquake, the kind of discovery that shakes governments, destroys alliances, and changes the balance of power in the criminal underworld. Investigators quickly traced the shipment back to its source, and every path, every route, every sign pointed in one direction: the Juarez Cartel, and more specifically, Amado Carrillo Fuentes, known worldwide as El Señor de los Cielos, the Lord of the Skies. For years, Amado had built a reputation as a silent, calculating mastermind. He operated differently from other cartel bosses. Instead of violence and flashy displays of power, he relied on intelligence, connections, money, and strategy. His fleet of aircraft transported drugs with efficiency no cartel had ever achieved before. But the discovery of 21 tons exposed something even more important. Amado's empire wasn't untouchable. Until that moment, he had managed to work with an extraordinary level of protection. High-ranking military officials, politicians, airport administrators, and even parts of the intelligence sector had benefited from his power. They protected him. They warned him. They turned a blind eye to his operations. But $1 billion seizure? That was too big to bury. Too big to explain. Too big to hide under the usual layers of corruption. Suddenly, the same officials who once benefited from Amado's empire were now being questioned, investigated, and pressured by both Mexican authorities and U.S. agencies. The United States, especially the DEA, intensified its hunt for Amado. They had been tracking him for years, but this seizure gave them the leverage they needed to demand action from Mexico. The DEA publicly declared the bust one of the largest cocaine seizures in world history. Cameras, newspapers, television stations, everyone was watching. Everyone was waiting for the Mexican government to respond. And for the first time, Amado felt the pressure closing in from every direction. Inside Mexico, rival cartels sensed a rare opportunity. The Sinaloa Cartel, the Tijuana Cartel, the Gulf Cartel. Everyone knew that if Amado appeared weak, if the protection was slipping, then Juarez territory could be challenged. Power in the cartel world shifts quickly, and weakness, even the appearance of it, attracts predators. But the biggest threat wasn't his rivals. It was the cracks forming inside his own organization. Some of Amado's closest allies began to question whether he still had the government connections he once claimed. Some feared extradition. Others feared that the government, to save face, might sacrifice Amado to the DEA. His empire, once built on silence and control, now faced betrayal, panic, and uncertainty. The 21-ton seizure didn't just expose cocaine. It exposed the fault lines inside Amado's cartel. Officials who feared losing their positions. Pilots afraid to fly. Lieutenants who questioned Amado's decisions. Corrupt politicians who turned their backs. Rivals who prepared for war. For the first time in years, Amado was no longer the untouchable Lord of the Skies. He was a hunted man, a cornered kingpin, a figure whose empire was beginning to crumble from the inside. That moment, that single warehouse in January 1997, changed everything. It marked the start of the end. And Amado knew it. He understood that the fallout from the seizure was unlike anything he had ever faced. This wasn't just another setback or another drug loss. This was the kind of blow that could destroy alliances, dismantle an empire, and force even most powerful criminals into desperation. From that day forward, Amado Carrillo Fuentes wasn't fighting to expand his empire. He was fighting to survive. By the middle of 1997, the world around Amado Carrillo Fuentes was collapsing piece by piece. For years, he had ruled the skies, built secret alliances, and operated with the confidence of a man who believed he was untouchable. But everything changed after the 21-ton cocaine seizure. Suddenly, Amado was surrounded by enemies, some visible, some hidden, and some sitting right beside him at the table. The U.S. DEA was chasing him harder than ever. For the Americans, Amado had become a symbol of everything they wanted to destroy, an invisible kingpin moving drugs with military precision. Every route he used, every pilot he paid, and every shipment he planned was now under intense surveillance. The DEA wanted him captured, extradited, or dead, anything that would shut down the Lord of the Skies. At the same time, the Mexican government was quietly turning against him. Officials who once protected him were now under pressure from international agencies and global media. Suddenly, helping Amado was too dangerous. Politicians who once shook his hand were now publicly denying any connection. High-ranking officers who had once warned him before raids were now refusing to answer his calls. And on the streets, the danger grew even faster. Rival cartels sensed blood. The Tijuana Cartel, the Gulf Cartel, the Sinaloa Cartel. All of them knew that Amado's empire was showing cracks. Old alliances began to crumble. And when there is even a whisper of weakness in the cartel world, war follows. But the most dangerous threat wasn't outside. It was inside. Amado's own organization began to fracture. Some of his closest men feared he could no longer protect them. Some believed the government was preparing to offer deals to anyone willing to betray him. Every day, the pressure grew. Every night, new rumors spread. Amado is losing control. Amado is surrounded. Amado's time is ending. And so, Amado Carrillo Fuentes made the most shocking decision of his life. He would disappear. Not hide. Not negotiate. Not run. Disappear. He planned to change his face completely, erase the man he had been, transform his identity, and escape into a new life far away from Mexico. This wasn't a simple nose job or minor surgery. It was a major reconstructive operation, the kind only a handful of surgeons in the entire country could perform. On July 3, 1997, Amado checked into a private hospital in Mexico City under a false name. He didn't arrive with bodyguards or a convoy. Everything was done quietly, secretly, with only a handful of people aware of what was happening. 2 of Mexico's top plastic surgeons were brought in through private channels. They were respected, highly skilled, and trusted, men known not only for their medical expertise, but also for their discretion. The plan was straightforward but extremely risky. Completely change Amado's facial structure, alter his identity, let him vanish into another country. He had the money. He had the contacts. He had everything needed to disappear forever. But then the unimaginable happened. After hours on the operating table, Amado didn't wake up. Doctors claimed he died from complications related to anesthesia, a sudden reaction, something that allegedly could not have been predicted. They said his heart failed. They said his body couldn't handle the stress. But immediately, suspicion started to grow. How could one of the most powerful and protected men in Mexico simply die during surgery? Why would he choose such a risky procedure at such a dangerous moment? Why were details about the surgery kept secret? And then came the event that transformed suspicion into full-blown conspiracy. Within days, both surgeons who operated on Amado were found dead. Their bodies weren't just killed. They were brutally tortured, stuffed inside metal drums, and left for authorities to discover. It was a message, a warning, a puzzle, and it raised questions that have never been answered. If Amado truly died on the operating table, who killed the surgeons? And more importantly, why were they killed at all? Were they silenced because they were the only ones who knew what really happened? Were they murdered by the cartel to prevent them from speaking? Or were they killed by government forces because they knew too much? Some believe the surgeons botched the procedure and were punished for it. Others believe the surgery succeeded and Amado lived, and the surgeons were eliminated to protect his new identity. And then there is the darkest theory of all, that Amado didn't die naturally, but was assassinated on the operating table by someone who wanted him gone. No one knows the truth. No one ever will. But one thing is certain. The deaths of those surgeons turned Amado's disappearance into one of the greatest mysteries in cartel history. 5 days after the supposed surgery, Mexican authorities finally presented what they claimed was the body of Amado Carrillo Fuentes. But instead of bringing clarity, the moment created even more confusion, more speculation, and more unanswered questions. The body, displayed briefly under heavy security, immediately raised doubts. Researchers, reporters, and even former cartel members who secretly observed the funeral noticed strange and suspicious details. The skin appeared bloated, unusually swollen, almost as if the body had been manipulated or preserved in a strange way. It didn't match what one would expect from someone who had just undergone a complicated surgical procedure. Even stranger, the coffin remained sealed at all times. Not once did the authorities open it for public confirmation. Not once did they allow investigators, journalists, or even extended family members to view the body closely. Only a handful of government officials were allowed near it. Everyone else was kept at a distance. Security around the funeral was beyond anything Mexico had ever seen for a criminal figure. Dozens of federal police units surrounded the cemetery, blocking roads, inspecting everyone who came near, and making sure no one approached the coffin without authorization. It was a kind of security usually reserved for presidents, not for a cartel boss. Family members, too, acted strangely. They refused to answer questions. They refused to confirm whether the body truly belonged to Amado. Some didn't even shed tears, as if they themselves were unsure what was happening, or perhaps they knew something the world didn't. Reporters also pointed out that the surgical scars described in official reports did not match what little could be seen on the body. If Amado had died during a complicated operation, why didn't the visible signs match the procedures that were supposedly performed? Why was everything so controlled, so restricted, so mysterious? These inconsistencies opened the door to theories that have survived for more than 2 decades. And the biggest question of all was simple. If Amado was one of the most powerful men in Mexico, why would he choose to undergo surgery in a hospital that could easily be infiltrated by enemies or authorities? Nothing about the official story made sense. Many researchers believed the surgery narrative was nothing more than a giant cover-up, a carefully constructed lie designed to close the case, avoid a scandal, and protect powerful individuals whose names would have come to light if Amado had been captured alive. One of the most popular theories is that Amado didn't die at all. Instead, he successfully faked his death, using the surgery as a perfect distraction, and escaped Mexico with a new identity. Supporters of this theory point out the sealed coffin, the lack of confirmed visual identification, and the suspicious behavior of his family. According to this version, Amado may have relocated to Chile, Argentina, Cuba, or even the Middle East. He had the money, the fake documents, the pilots, and the connections to disappear forever. But other experts believe something more strategic happened. Some claim the Mexican government made a secret deal with Amado. In exchange for information about corruption inside the military, political offices, and law enforcement, Amado was allowed to vanish. A new life for silence. Protection in exchange for secrets that could shake the entire country. This theory suggests that the government needed Amado alive, not dead, because he knew too much. Names, dates, payments, agreements, everything that connected high-ranking officials to the cartel world. Letting him die was simply a convenient way to remove him from public attention. Then there's the darkest theory of all, the one that many insiders whisper about but never say openly, that the explosion caused by the 21-ton cocaine seizure put enormous pressure on politicians, generals, and intelligence officials. That Amado knew secrets involving powerful people, secrets that could destroy careers and bring down entire institutions if revealed. According to this theory, Amado did not die from anesthesia. He was silenced, assassinated on the operating table, eliminated because he had become too dangerous. The surgeons later murdered to erase witnesses and protect the truth. This version argues that the sealed coffin, the heavy security, and the rushed funeral were not signs of respect, but signs of fear. Fear that someone might discover what really happened to the Lord of the Skies. Whether Amado faked his death, escaped to a new life, or was murdered by forces more powerful than the cartels themselves, one thing remains certain. The mystery only grows darker with time. No one knows the truth. No one ever will. And the legend of Amado Carrillo Fuentes, alive or dead, continues to haunt Mexico to this day. After Amado Carrillo Fuentes' supposed death, Mexico was thrown into a storm of chaos, confusion, and violent transformation. For years, Amado had been the quiet architect behind one of the most organized criminal empires in the world. His leadership wasn't based on fear alone. It was built on strategy, diplomacy, and calculated alliances. The Juarez cartel moved like a machine under his control. But the moment news of his death spread, that machine collapsed. His brother, Vicente Carrillo Fuentes, stepped in to take control. Vicente was loyal, disciplined, and respected, but he didn't have the same strategic mind or diplomatic skill that Amado possessed. He couldn't demand unity the way El Señor de los Cielos had. And without Amado's presence holding everything together, the cracks inside the organization burst open. Lieutenants began fighting for territory. Old alliances fell apart. Former friends turned into bitter enemies. What had once been a stable, well-organized empire began tearing itself apart from the inside. The power struggles were brutal. Cities like Juarez, Chihuahua, and Sinaloa saw explosions of violence. Kidnappings, executions, ambushes, and betrayals that signaled the beginning of a new era of cartel warfare. Everyone wanted a piece of what Amado left behind. Everyone wanted control over the routes, the money, the planes, the territory. And as the violence spread, one question refused to die. Was Amado Carrillo Fuentes really dead? Even after the sealed coffin, the suspicious funeral, and the government's official statements, investigators, journalists, and cartel insiders could not agree on what happened in that operating room. Over time, three main theories emerged, each with its own supporters, believers, and evidence. Theory 1. He died from the surgery, a medical accident. Some say the truth is simple. Too simple. According to this version, Amado's death was nothing more than a tragic medical failure. The surgery he attempted was extremely complex. Full facial reconstruction, body alterations, and procedures that required hours under heavy anesthesia. The risks were enormous. Even the best surgeons in the world would have been cautious. Supporters of this theory believe that Amado's heart simply gave out under the stress of the surgery. Combined with the powerful doses of anesthesia, his body could not survive the strain. It's possible. It's logical. It's the explanation the government insists is true. But if that were the case, why were the surgeons murdered? Why was the coffin never opened? Why did the body look altered? The medical accident theory may be the official story, but it leaves more questions than answers. Theory 2. Death was faked. Amado disappeared. This is a theory most cartel insiders believe. They argue that Amado had the money, the political protection, and the medical expertise to pull off something extraordinary. Fake his death and escape the country with a new identity. He had billions of dollars. He had access to corrupt officials who could create clean documents. He had pilots who could fly him anywhere in the world. Many believe that after the surgery, successful or not, Amado was quietly moved out of Mexico. Some claim he retired in Cuba, where powerful politicians protected him. Others say he lived quietly in Argentina or Chile under a new name, surrounded by luxury and guarded by loyal men. The sealed coffin, the strange funeral, the inconsistent surgical scars, all of it supports the theory that the body shown to the public simply wasn't Amado. According to this version, the Lord of the Skies didn't die. He simply vanished. Theory 3. Assassinated by the state, eliminated for knowing too much. Then there is the darkest theory, the one whispered in political circles and feared by insiders. The 21-ton cocaine seizure didn't just expose drugs. It exposed connections, powerful, dangerous connections between the Juarez cartel and high-ranking Mexican officials, military commanders, airport authorities, and political elites. Amado knew everything. Names, dates, bank accounts. agreements, corrupt networks that reached deep into the government. Some investigators believe the state decided he was too dangerous to allow alive, that his arrest or extradition would unleash secrets capable of collapsing institutions. So he was killed not by surgical complications, but by deliberate action, and the surgeons eliminated to erase the last witnesses. This theory suggests the operating room wasn't a place of medical failure. It was a crime scene. Among narcos, a saying still circulates: El Señor de los Cielos never died. He just stopped flying. Whether Amado Carrillo Fuentes was murdered, whether he disappeared into another life, or whether he truly died under knife, one truth stands above all. The 21-ton cocaine seizure didn't just reveal drugs. It revealed the fragile, dangerous balance of power between cartels and governments. And the legacy of Amado Carrillo Fuentes, the mysteries, the secrets, the unanswered questions, continues to shape Mexico's criminal landscape even today.